This meeting is being recorded.
And we are on the chapter 33 in Sri Nissargadatta's book, I Am That. Everything happens by itself. That's another way of saying you are not the doer, which I find to be one of the biggest mysteries, because it's interesting that, to me, it's fascinating because that seems like such a high Vedantic concept to me, to not be the doer. And yet Ramakrishna in the gospel, which is primarily teachings from when he was in the presence of his householder devotees, that he teaches that in there regularly. He makes that statement throughout the gospel, you are not the doer. And that's such a conflict for me, because that seems like such a high teaching, such a high state that would be so contrary to practice and life as a householder. It's like, how could you go to work every day and raise a family and actually know that you're not the doer? It seems like such a high idea, and yet Ramakrishna is not shy about it. Some of the other high Advaita teachings and stuff, he's very conservative about them. That doesn't give them out to the general population. He kind of holds on to those teachings because they require a very highly refined practice. But this one he puts out there regularly, and says it again and again, and leaves no doubt about the truth of it, that you are not the doer. And the closest I can even come to even seeing this at all is twofold. One is this idea of the dreamer. When you're in the dream working, you can work yourself to death, but there's not any fruit produced. So you're actually not doing anything, even though you have the illusion of doing something. So that's one way of non-doership, to understand that none of this is real, and that you're just moving dream objects around within a dream. And when you die, you leave the dream, and nothing actually happened. And so in that one sense, you could not be the doer. In the other sense is this notion of, as the character in the dream, even though you have a local ego that's owning the body that you're using for that dream, both that ego and that body are non-real. You, as the sleeper, are the only real thing. And so the character in the dream, even though the character in the dream sees himself as being the doer, he's not, because the dreamer is actually the doer of the whole dream. And he, as a character, is just playing a part that he is a puppet for in the hands of the dreamer. That the local sense of self is utterly unreal within that dream. So in those two senses, those are the only two ways that I have figured out that this could possibly be true, in either of those. And both of those require a transcendence of egoism in order to experience that truth, to actually know that truth. And there are times, some experiments, because I love these experiments, to try and create scenarios where I can practice those scenarios and try and touch some of these ideas. And so for this one about not being the doer, I've chosen dishwashing, because dishwashing is enough of an automatic experience that I can actually put my mind to meditation and to withdrawing from the sense of washing dishes. And the dishwashing itself is so rhythmic and obvious that it doesn't require much mind time. And so with that, I've kind of at least gotten an idea of watching myself do dishes, and understanding that really the eye of I is not necessary at the moment for that process to happen. That my mind and body know the habit and technique of dishwashing without having to have me, the I, present. And so in that sense, the I is not the doer. The body mind are doing the work, and I'm just observing it. So there's that aspect of it. And then, of course, my favorite thing is this, which, in one sense, I look like the doer, right? I'm the one making my finger bend. And yet, if you ask me how that's happening, I couldn't begin to tell you. So how can I claim to be the doer when I have no idea how it's being done. I couldn't tell you even the first step of how that is happening. There's degrees worth of biology and physics and chemistry in my being able just simply to do this. And so in that sense, also, we are not the doer, in the fact that we've moved into this body, and even though it's intimately our body through our attachment to it, we still have no idea how it works. It's the best Apple designed computer system in the world. We move into it, and intuitively we learn how it works and we make it go. But we don't have any idea how we do that. How is it that you eat a carrot, the body reduces it down to its molecular level, takes it apart, and then restructures it molecule by molecule back into something that it needs, and then sends it there? What? How? I didn't do anything but taste ice cream. The body did all the rest, took it apart at an incredible amount of science involved. And here, just dopey me. Yeah, I run my body. Yeah, of course I do. Having no idea. So in that sense, we're a guest in this world. We are not the doers. And that will become more and more clear. And so our chapter is titled, Everything Happens by Itself. And our first question, the questioner says, the fact is that here and now I am asking you, when did the feeling I am the body arise? At my birth or this morning? It's a one-word answer. Now. It's not something that arose in the past or at a different time from now. At this very moment, you are nursing the thought, I am the body. You're maintaining that thought. So he says, now, the questioner, but I remember having it yesterday too. Maharaj, well, the memory of yesterday is also now only. Right? You're not talking about the past when you're talking about the past, because you're in the present. So you're describing the present. It's a present description of the past. But I remember having it yesterday too. Well, yes, the memory of yesterday is now only. But surely I exist in time. I have a past and a future, Maharaj. That is how you imagine now. Right? So you're always in the now. Why? Because this moment has never ended and never begun. It's an experience of the eternal. Right? This moment is always here. And it's always there. And so he says that even in this time you're imagining, even though you're imagining a past and a future, you're still ever only now. And the questioner says, well, there must have been a beginning. Maharaj again, now, right? And what about an ending? What has no beginning cannot end, right? There's an isness to these things. These things are not what they seem. We've learned that, right? That we're not seeing things. We're not seeing material, right? We're looking at a symbolic world within our own mind that our brain has created through its senses, based on the information it's getting through senses, wherever they are and whatever they are. And so we're not living in the world that we think we are. We're living in a world of thought, and everything that we're looking at is made of thought material. Whatever that universal material of dreams is, that can become anything and everything. Brahman, perhaps, or consciousness itself, perhaps. Since it's definitely by the light of consciousness that we see, right? Because to light this inner world, this inner symbolic creation that the mind is creating for us in real time, right? Because we can't see the external world, we're just getting data through our eyes. We can't smell it, we're just getting data through the nose. We can't hear it, we're just getting data through the ears. And from all of that data, we've created this illusion, this world, but it's made of the same material as our dreams. We don't think about it that way because we have identified so deeply with body that places us in the world, right? And so all of this noticing this escapes us because of our identity with body. We believe that not only are we this body, but through this body, we're actually in the dream, when in fact the dream is in us, because we are not this body, we are the dreamer, right? All of that. And so all of this is happening here and now. There is no other time, there is no other place, there is no verifiable existence of a past or a future. There's no verifiable existence of an external versus an internal world. We only know the internal world. That's all that we live in. We assume that the information coming in through the senses is coming from an external world, but that we should never forget, that's purely assumption. We cannot validate an existence of an external world.
Well, that's what I was going to say about, noticing how his mind was imputing that there has to be a beginning and an end,
Right.
And when, it's like when, the ignorance has no beginning, but it definitely has an end. So his statement is, flawed to start with.
Whose statement? The questioner?
Yeah, the questioner. Isn't that who stated that, if it has a beginning, it has to have an end?
Right. And he says it doesn't have a beginning, so it obviously doesn't have an end.
Yeah,
so,
but that's the thing with the ignorance. It doesn't have a beginning.
Oh yeah, Maya. Yeah, Maya is.
But it does have an end.
Right. No beginning, but an end. Yeah. But it's not. Yeah, exactly. So what has no beginning cannot end. But I am conscious of my question, Maharaj. A false question cannot be answered. It can only be seen as false. So what's he meaning here? I had a dream when I was 13 that I was flying, right? And the way that I flew was like swimming underwater, but I was swimming through the air. And I had to run to get to a certain speed, and I would feel that speed click in my body. And at that point, when I was running, I would just lay flat in the air and start stroking, and I could swim, I could fly, right? So that's my dream of flying. Now, a false question would be, how can I fly? Right? How can I fly? That's the false question. Because I can tell you the next day, because in that dream, one of the times that I flew off of my brother's dresser in his room. And so that next day, I was in my brother's room with my friend Brigitte, and we were climbing up on that dresser over and over and over again and jumping off, trying to figure out how we flew off of that dresser in the dream. And so obviously we weren't successful in that. But you see, the questions that we ask about spiritual life a lot of times don't have answers. And that's frustrating to us, but they don't have answers because they're not questions. They're questions based on a false understanding. So it's like a child asking, how does the water in the faucet appear out of nothing? Right? Well, there's not an answer to that question because it doesn't appear out of nothing. It comes through a pipe, right? But our view as a child is only partial. And so we just see water come out of the hole in the faucet. We're like, wow, that's magical, right? Or how is it that when the doors of the elevator close, how is it possible that when they open again, you're in a different place, right? We were just standing here. And so these questions that don't have an answer because they're questions of a child, questions from within the dream. So a false question cannot be answered. It can only be seen as false. That's the best we can do, is to understand that we don't understand, to see that we don't know. He says, to me, it is real. Maharaj, when did it appear real to you? Now, right? It appears as real in the now. Yes, it is quite real to me now. Maharaj, what is real about your question? Your question is a state of mind. No state of mind can be more real than the mind itself. Is the mind real? It is but a collection of states. Each of them are transitory. How can a succession of transitory states be considered real? right? This is the mystery. It's really one of my favorite things to think about. At what point do I exist? If there is no past and there is no future, at what point do I exist? What is this present? If you have a past and a future, you can't have a present, because that moment when the future becomes the past is instantaneous. There's not a pause where I can experience it and then it goes, right? There's no room there. You've got two infinites, an infinite past and an infinite future, bumping up against each other. Where is the present in there? There's no room for a present. It would be so microscopically, infinitely thin that you could never find it. And yet here we are.
Well, I don't even think it could be thin. I don't even think it could have dimension. It would be a singularity.
Well, it would be, yeah. I mean, it could have two dimensions, width and height, but not depth. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't exist. If past and future are real, I think that's the way we would have to answer it. If the past and present were real, then there is no, or past and future is real, there is no present, because there's no place for it. And so we have to deduce that the past and the future are not real. The only thing real is the present, is the now. That's the only place that we experience. And so, very interesting. He says, but this question and all that we're experiencing, all the changing, is happening in mind, right? And he's saying, what's real about any of this that's happening? It's all states of mind. And that the mind itself is, we don't know what it is, right? We don't know what the mountains of our dreams are made of. We don't know what the people in our dreams are made of. They look like people, just like people do now. But even now, when you're looking at a door, you're not seeing the door itself. You're seeing your mind's symbol for that door. So even though you deduce that door is made of wood and been painted with latex paint, the fact of the matter is both of those are false. Because that door that you're looking at is not the door that was painted. It's a symbolic representation of that door built from your senses, placed in your mind. And so where does it exist? And what is it made of? And what are we seeing? We cannot know. But it is not what it seems to be. This is what he's trying to get us to see, to get us to notice and understand. That basically all that we think is real in this experience of body-mind is just a collection of states, just a collection of states of mind. And how can a succession of transitory states be considered real? Right? The real is something else. We can't look at that which the senses are telling us and draw our conclusion. We're going to have to see it differently, in a different way, right? And that different way is through that silence of being, through a direct experience of it. All right, everybody with it so far? Have we gotten too far out?
Nope. In reality, we're nothing and we have nothing.
Yeah, perfect. Nothing makes a lot of noise.
And nothing ever happened.
Nothing ever.
Nothing is happening. No, that's the thing. That's the thing, because it's, and again, I really like that idea. In the movie, there is no movement. It's one still frame after another, and the mind creates movement to explain the difference between the two states, right? And literally, that's the real world as well. In the moment, there's no way for there to be movement. We've already seen that the moment has to be infinitely thin. There's nowhere to move. So the way that it moves is the mind takes a snapshot of the moment and then takes another snapshot of the moment, and then it compares the snapshots and sees difference. And then the mind jumps in there with the narrator and describes and explains the difference. And to explain that difference, it invents movement. It invents cause and effect. It invents space. It invents time. So the mind has all of these tools that it invents, literally creates on the spot, in order to apply to these two snapshots of an unchanged moment, in order to explain how come they don't match. And so this is how it goes, and this is where we're stuck.
liberating.
So how can a succession of transitory states be considered real? Like beads on a string, events follow events forever. That's what the questioner says, right? Because he's firmly planted in the mind. So he's got time to work with it. He's got cause and effect to work with. He's got past and future to work with. Maharaj, they are all strung on the basic idea, I am the body, right? So this is what is stringing these different snapshots of the moment together into a narrative. Your idea that I'm a body, that puts you inside the narrative. But even this is a mental state and does not last. It comes and goes like all other states, right? So this idea of I am the body is also not permanent on you. How do you know that? Because when you're in the dream at night, you're not the body, right? You now believe yourself to be a different body, a dream body, whatever that dream body might be. But you silently, seamlessly, and without even noticing, left your old body and have now fully identified with a new one. And you don't even know when it happened. It just happened. Perfectly natural for you. Death will be the same way. It will be so natural and such a eventless moment. And when you come to in your new form or whatever form or non-form that might be, it will be as normal to you as the dream body. It will be as yours as if it had always been yours, just like the dream body. You will have barely any notion of all of this experience that you've got such a headache over now. It will barely be a memory. It'll be a wisp to you. So being the body comes and goes like other states. The illusion of being the body-mind is there only because it's not investigated, only because you're assuming, and you're happy to assume. So you don't question, you know? We don't start questioning until this thing turns into a haggard, droopy, you know.
Then you're like, how do I get rid of this thing?
Yeah, get it off me, get it off me. If you're lucky, I really believe that's why I call old age the purest form of grace. Because mother, you know, she knows that she can't just rip it out of your hands. So she just turns it into something that ultimately you're going to be like, get rid of this thing.
Yeah, you're like, put it in the trash, please.
Yes, burn it. Burn it. It hurts, it smells, it droops, it sags, it bends, it's creaky. Get rid of this thing. I'm so tired of it. Right? So that's what old age is. It's mother getting us prepared to let go. And look at what she has to do to us to get us to let go. Because, yeah, I've seen some forms laying in a bed that you're not sure that shouldn't have been let go of at least 5 years earlier. You're like, oh my God, is there still someone in there? Holy cow. Where's the space? Right? So the illusion of being the body-mind is there, but only because it's not investigated. So this is why we discern. This is why we go into the internal world. The outer world is so comfortable for us because it's based on all of our wrong assumptions. When we go inside, our early and initial experiences of our inner world is sort of a red nothingness, you know, just sort of dullness. We don't know. There's no world in here. I can't get in here. What's going on? Right? And that's the initial feeling. But after a while, with some practice, once the actual silence comes setting in, you find an infinity within. You find a world that displays all of the things we're reading about here in the scriptures. So the illusion of being body-mind is there, but only because it's not investigated. Non-investigation is the thread on which all the states of mind are strung. Right? They only hold together when you're not thinking about it. Only holds together when you don't think about it. Right? So non-investigation is the thread on which all the states of mind are strung. It is like darkness in a closed room. It is there, apparently, but when the room is opened, where does it go? It goes nowhere because it was not there. All states of mind, all names, all forms of existence are rooted in non-inquiry, non-investigation, in imagination and credulity. It is right to say I am, but to say that I am this or that I am that is a sign of non-inquiring, not examining, of mental weakness or lethargy. Right? So the only reasons not to be spiritual are mental weakness or lethargy. So sorry. If you're not spiritual, you're either lethargic or mentally weak.
Well, I'm both, Swami, so I guess this is the end for us.
Yes. No, but this just to say, this is a very important point because we there's resistance inside. It's not a decision of ours to be ignorant, right? We slip into it, and then the mental state that allows us to slip into it also prevents us from slipping out of it, right? We have our hooks and holes in there holding us firmly into place. And if you start investigating a line of thought, I don't know if this has happened for you, but if you start investigating a line of thought that takes you pretty deep inside and then suddenly starts to flicker out of existence, there's a sense of panic around that, if you go through and do like a meditation where you feel everything one at a time, and each thing that you feel, you renounce it and declare it not to be you. And you do that very methodically and with lots of focus. When you start getting down to it, there's a sense of panic because you don't know who you are, because you're not any of this. And you're like, but what is this? And that inquiry is what has to happen, because during the day, none of this is real. It's all mental facility. But do you know how I spent at least 50 years of my life assuming that what I saw was material? Assuming that what I saw was a wooden desk and a textile chair. I assume that's real, but through investigation, I've come to understand it can't be real because I've never experienced it. I've never experienced the outside world. Right? I only get information about it. I don't actually get to touch it. My body touches it and then tells me about it. My mind, cognates it and then tells me about it. But the eye of I can't investigate it. I can't get it. That's why the Gita says the soul cannot be burned, cannot be wetted, right? It can't interface with material because it's spirit. It's not made of dream. It is the real. You can't bring it into your dream, and you can't take anything from your dream into you. It can't, it just simply can't. Nothing can cross that barrier. And we don't have this awareness at all until we really start sitting still and sticking with a thought. That's why we have to have that ability to have that single-mindedness, to be able to follow a thought all the way down to this truth without getting distracted along the way. That's why we have to have that steadiness of mind. That's why we have to have that self-control, because the thinking for this level of discernment, you have to follow the thread all the way down. You can't be distracted and grab other threads or grab other ideas on your way down. You have to stick with it until you see, oh, what is this answer, right? Questioner, well, if it is light, how did darkness arise? How can there be darkness in the midst of light? Maharaj, there is no darkness in the midst of light. Self-forgetfulness is the darkness. That's why we call it ignorance, right? We're ignoring the real for the moment. So self-forgetfulness is the darkness. When we are absorbed in other things, in the not self, we forget the self. There is nothing unnatural about it. But why forget the self through excess of attachment? Wisdom lies in never forgetting the self as the ever-present source of both the experiencer and his experience. Right? So this wisdom lies. Okay, if you want to know what wisdom is, It's inherent in you because it's there all the time, but it only manifests when you never forget the self as the ever-present source of both experiencer, which would be the body-mind ego complex thing going on here, the experiencer, and the experience, which means the assumptions about what is being experienced that are made, right? And it's only with assumptions that we can experience, right? Only through attachment that we experience, right? So wisdom lies in never forgetting the self as the source of both. So through the day, always remaining established here in the source of both. And if you're the source of both, you can't be one or the other. You know, you can't be the doer and be the source at the same time. You know? It's like you have to let go in order to see the whole. Questioner, in my present state, the I am the body idea comes spontaneously, while the I am pure being idea must be imposed on the mind as something true but not experienced. Maharaj, yes, sadhana or practice consists in reminding oneself forcibly of one's pure beingness, of not being anything in particular, nor a sum of particulars, not even the totality of all particulars which make up a universe. All exists in the mind. Even the body is an integration in the mind of a vast number of sensory perceptions. Each perception also a mental state. If you say, I am the body, show it. Questioner, here it is. Ta-da! I'm the body. Let's see what he has to say. Only when you think of it. Only when you think of it. Both mind and body are intermittent states. The sum total of these flashes creates the illusion of existence. Inquire, what is permanent in the transient? What is real in the unreal? This is spiritual practice. This is sadhana. To stand in the middle of this and go, okay, what is real? And the first thing we're told is that which is unchanging, right? And so then we look and we understand that everything around us is involved in a rate of change somehow. And that all of it is going to be something different in 500 years as a random number. But everything is going to be something else. So nothing is what it is in this moment. So the question is obvious to us. What is it? You know, and to know what it is, we first ask, what is this? What is the perceiver? What is the I? What is it that's unchanging, right? Because the only thing that's not changing is the observer of change. And we can't seem to look into that. We can't seem to see that because it is that which is seeing. So we can't get into it in order to see it. Right? So only when you think of it, this is here. Only when you take notice. All right? And have you had that happen? I'm going to just pull up a random scenario where you're just like sitting in a room and you think you're seeing movement, and there's a broom leaning against the wall right where you just thought you saw movement. And you can't remember if that broom was there before it caught your attention or not. It just suddenly caught your attention, and now you're aware of the broom on the wall. And you can't answer the question, was that broom always there? Or did it just appear there? You know, and so you sit there and you think for a moment, well, what are the ramifications of me saying it just appeared there? Right? And so we say, well, that's got a few too many unanswerable questions. So we won't make that assumption. We'll assume it's always been there and I haven't noticed it. Right? And so this is what he's saying here. All of these unreal things, all of this egoistic world that you've arranged for yourself only exists, the components of it only exist when you put your awareness on them, right? They don't exist when they're not there. Both the body and mind are intermittent states, so it's not a constant flow. The only thing constant is the I, right? The isness, being. That's the only thing constant right now. Everything else is changing constantly in that moment. So inquire, knowing that, inquire what is permanent in this transient. This body is changing all the time. Right now, everything in it is moving, constantly through it. What is real in it? What's not changing? And you look at your mind is constantly changing. The flow of thoughts is never stopping, right? And what is it that ties it all together? What is it that gives it a sense of permanence, a sense of existence? It is God. And that's the answer to your inquiry. But until you take it apart, you can't understand it. Right? So to inquire what is permanent in the transient and what is real in the unreal, this is sadhana. The questioner says, well, the fact is that I'm thinking of myself as the body. Maharaj, well, think of yourself by all means, only don't bring the idea of body into the picture. There is only a stream of sensations, perceptions, memories, and ideations. The body is an abstraction created by our tendency to seek unity and diversity, which is, again, not wrong. Oh, wow, it's great to see that in writing. So this is exactly what we've been talking about, that the function of the mind is to recreate the singularity, the unity that it intuitively knows by the self to be true and real. But it has to create that unity within mind because it has identified itself with mind and it's thinking that I am the mind. So my mind has to be this intuitive unity, this intuitive singularity that I know. And yet I'm only getting individual building blocks through each of the senses. Through 5 senses, I get 5 pieces. And then through memories, I get another piece, right? And then through abstractions, I create other pieces. And what do? Through relativity, through a relative tool like the mind, I take all of these disparate pieces and I try and recreate the unity that I intuitively know to be true. And my process of doing that is egoism, right? I'm building my womb, my sense of self in this vast world that I've assumed and that I've broken into parts and am trying to reconstruct based on an intuitive knowing that there's one out there. And I'm going to use relativity to create that oneness amongst diversity, right? And so this is the hard work that we're involved in deluding ourselves all day long. This is called secular knowledge, taking component pieces, placing them in the mind, and learning is just simply taking lines of relativity and attaching them between that thing you just put in there and all the things that you've put in there at different times in the past. And that's how they tell you whether you're smart or not. If you've got lots of things in there with lots of threads of relativity tying them all together, then you're a very smart person in the world, right? If you're a dumb person, you've got 2 or 3 objects in there and a rubber band between them. And you're content just to stroke the rubber band. But, this this is the way the world is. And this is our situation. So he says, think of yourself, right? But don't think of the composite work that you've done. When you think, don't think of the arrangements and the states of mind that you've created. Go right back down to the senses, right? And for doing this, like the experiments that I like to put together, I laid in bed some number of years ago, I don't remember how long ago, and I felt the cold sheets on my toes, on the tips of my toes. I was laying on my back. And I was sitting there and I looked at it and I said, oh, I can feel my toes. And I asked myself, wait a minute. How do you know you're feeling your toes? How do you know what you're feeling? Only go for what you're feeling. Don't let any assumptions follow you. Just feel what you're feeling. And I realized I didn't feel my toes at all. I felt the sheets of the bed and the cold on my toes. And I realized that I didn't know where I felt that, right? Because touch doesn't have geolocation. I mean, I know it's my foot, but I don't know where my foot is, right? To know where my foot is, I have to cross-reference with my vision, right? I have to go, okay, all right. I feel the foot. Oh, there, I see my toe. Oh, that's my foot down there. Now I know that down there is a quality of foot. And so now when I feel foot, I apply down there. But the down there is a cross-reference. It's not an attribute of foot. So anyway, you take these different practices and isolate what you know and what you don't know. What are your assumptions and what are not your assumptions, right? And go through and start that sorting. And when it comes to body, you make a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of assumptions there. And so try and learn what they are by observation, by practice, by coming up with scenarios for testing. This world is your laboratory, or a way of using it would be as a laboratory for you to find the self, for you to find what you are. So think of yourself by all means, but don't bring the idea of the body into the picture. There is only a stream of sensations, and this is what he's talking about. Only take the raw material. Don't take your assumptions about that raw material. Just take the raw material, the stream of sensations, the perceptions, the memories, the ideations. The body is an abstraction. You've put that together. You've created the idea of a body. You've created it by your tendency to seek unity and diversity, right? So you, through drawing together these disparate senses, have drawn lines of relativity to create a unity of something called a body. So the body is an abstraction created by your tendency to seek unity and diversity, which again is not wrong. It's quite natural for that which is a unity to want to recreate that notion of self in its world of disparate parts. So the questioner, I'm being told to think I am the body, is a blemish in the mind. Maharaj, why talk like this? Such expression creates problems. The self is the source of all, and of all, the final destination. Nothing is external. Right? So he says, I'm being told to think that I'm the body is a blemish in the mind. Right and wrong, right? To put it into a dual thing. He's saying, why phrase things like that? Why step into the mind to formulate the question out of all of these unreal things, right? Why talk like this? Such expression just creates problems. Why? Because you start asking questions that are only relative to the dream. They have no meaning. The answer to that question isn't real. So you're creating unreal questions when you step into the dream and complicate things. See things.
Can I ask you something, if you're familiar with, or if it happens in the Ramakrishna order? But there's people that have their sadhana or their practice is to never speak again. And to me, that seems like a very, a lot of people probably encourage me to take that up, but that seems like a really good thing to me. If you could, because sometimes I just experiment with, I just try to stop all the commentation and all the dialogue in the mind, and you pay attention to how linear speech is and how it's shackled, like thought is shackled to that linear language, and if you could just stop that and stop all the commentary and all the dialogue and just act just on the data, that to me seems like that could be a really good practice if somebody was able to have a situation to do that.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it would be a good practice for sure, but more important than a silent mouth is a silent mind. And that can be practiced all the time. There's so much time where your mind is running for no reason whatsoever, thinking about Tom and Jerry and the dishwater and the cat down the street. So it would probably be more valuable to practice silence of mind when you become aware when you're just randomly thinking and just stop it.
Yeah, actually, that is when I said language, and I'm talking about the dialogue in the mind also as far as physical dialogue, but you can't have physical dialogue without the activity in the mind anyway, but that's exactly what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
to separate and just not have that dialogue.
Right. And the only way to do that is through the sadhana, through awareness. You have to become aware that you're just an endless rambler in your head. Once you're aware of it, it will take care of itself, because that is unnatural, to be a constant rambler in your head. But you have to notice it. You have to become aware of it. And so this is really what we're practicing. We're not practicing to quiet the mind. We're practicing awareness, because awareness itself will take care of all the problems. But we have to be aware. We can't see the problems because we live in our assumptions. And that's what we're trying to get rid of. We're stopping the assumptions, trying to see things as they are in their component parts and let them be, right? And really, all of this head knowledge, this construction of philosophies and if-thens in the head, not much value there, except that it leads us out of the head ultimately. But, at some point, being the observer and being the conscious observer, we become aware that that's all that's necessary. We don't have to do anything else. We just have to become constantly aware of the observer. And through that, we will know, because it will become obvious to us, because we'll be paying attention at every level. If we pay attention at every level, we know I'm not the body. I'm not this mind. I know that this world is at least a copy of something, that it is not the thing itself, and that I cannot know the thing itself, right? That there's nothing out there that can be known. And so with that, you shut down the external world and you go internal, and you just sit there and simply be aware of everything. And you get more and more and more subtle. You begin to hear more and more quiet things, and you begin to see more and more tiny, minuscule thoughts that were happening between the other thoughts, right? And you start to become aware of these things inside. And as you become aware of them, if you can manage to stay uninterested in them, keep the me and mine out, they also will continue to settle. And at some point, the amazing beauty of all of this is, at some point you start becoming aware of truth. It starts manifesting, because you've removed all the dust. You've managed to get all that noise away, and it might not be perfectly clean yet, but it's gotten quiet enough that now you're starting to hear the expression of truth, right? You're starting to become aware of spirit. You're starting to become aware of time, of timelessness, of infinity. You start becoming aware of the separation between body, mind, and self, right? And in those assumptions, you sit there and you start to establish in them. And then this little tendril of bliss becomes apparent, right? And you're like, wow, that was so subtle. I never realized it was there. That's right. Thought is very gross, and material is even more gross, right? Very clunky. The beauty of life happens at the subtlest levels inside. And to become aware of those, that's ecstasy. That's inner peace. All right. When the body idea becomes obsessive, is it not altogether wrong? Maharaj, there is nothing wrong in the idea of a body, nor even in the idea I am the body. But limiting oneself to one body only is a mistake. In reality, all existence, every form, is my own, within my consciousness. I cannot tell what I am, because words cannot describe because words can describe only what I am not. I am, and because I am, all is. But I am beyond consciousness, and therefore in consciousness I cannot say what I am. Yet I am. The question, who am I, has no answer. No experience can answer it, for the self is beyond experience. Now, basically, all you have to do, take this, just, if you can remember being in a dream, be in that dream, right? And start thinking. Your problem in the dream is that you think you're in the dream. where is that dream? That dream is within you. And who am I? I'm the container of the dream, right? Well, then who is this character in the dream? This character in the dream is just a thought. How have I become that thought? Well, I've attached to it. I've chosen it as a particular. And from that particular, I'm seeing the rest of the dream. But because I've chosen a particular, now the rest of the dream has become external to me, right? Is that a truth? Well, as long as you stay attached to the idea of the particular in the dream, yes, you are in the dream and the dream is external to you. But is that true? No. Why is that not true? Because you are the dreamer. You're the one asleep in the bed. And the dream is inside of you. And you are not in that dream, even as a particular anywhere. As a matter of fact, as the truth is that he's pointing to right here, everything in that dream is you, equally you, just as much you as the particular you that you've chosen to experience that dream from, right? Everything is you in that dream, but you don't experience it as you. You don't see it as you. And if you studied it with attachments, you would never know that it was not you or that it was you, right? So in order for the person, for your particular in the dream to know the nature of the dream, it has to stop thinking that it's the character in the dream. And to do that, it has to go inside itself. Why does it go inside itself? Because the inside of the particular in the dream is the same as the inside of the dreamer, right? So you're coming to a place where you're going to be able to see both worlds. You're coming to a place where you're going to see, as soon as you detach, I am in fact this whole dream. I am the dreamer. I am not the dreamed. And nothing in this dream is what it seems. The wooden trees are not wooden trees. They're trees made of consciousness. And I am viewing them with the light of consciousness because there's no candle in my dream. There's no light in my head. Light is imagined, and imagined light is the light of consciousness, right? So all of this is mapped out very clearly if you sit there and contemplate dreams and you contemplate how they work. And more than ever in my life, I'm fully convinced this is the reason that we dream. Because Mother is giving us a direct experience of how the delusion is a delusion and how the universe is within you and how it can be experienced as being external to you, even though it exists only within you, right? So the whole mystery, Mother is putting all of the mystery into an example that we go to bed with every night. And by contemplating that and thinking about that, it leads you to the truth of the Vedanta, right? And that's why they call it awakening, because we finally awaken from this idea of a particular body in a particular dream. And we let go of the idea that this world that we're living in is external to us. We realize, no, it's a copy of an imagined external world within my own mind. And there's where I live and navigate. And that it's always changing. And that there's nothing there that is what it is. I am is the only reality. Right? And so finding that I am that's common to the dreamer and the dreamed is what we're trying to do through spiritual practice. And then holding on to that I am that is unchanging, because it belongs to me in every state. It's the I of every state. All right. So we'll stop there for this morning.